Dear friends, we will begin our session in this afternoon. And this afternoon is divided in two parts. The first part will be a conference of Father Kirill Hovorun, and the second part, some sort of a final discussion. Dear friends, we will begin our session in this afternoon. Okay, that's very nice. Parts. First part will be
Yeah, I'm very happy that Father Kirill Hovorun made it to join us because he accepted the invitation. However, he got another invitation for at least for Thursday to give a keynote lecture in Lund on Ukraine. But you have been so ascetic to immediately after then other day to go to Copenhagen and to join us to travel to Kalamata. Father Kirill Hovorun is based in Ukraine, born in Kiev probably, and he is teaching actually in Rome at the Gregorian University and also in Sweden, although he was also in Yale and in California and many other places. He made his doctorate with Father Andrew Laus on the monothelite disputation, and which was published with Brill, I think, with Brill in the first decade of 2000. Yes, Father Kirill, it's your turn now. We are happy that you are again with us after several times already, for instance, in Thessaloniki or in Esztergom, and maybe also in other places. It's your turn.
Thank you so much. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to apologize for being late. I feel myself like arriving in the 11th hour, but I always feel myself ascetical when it comes to Greece. So whenever there is a chance to come to Greece, I can be whatever you ask me to be, just to be here. It's such a beautiful opportunity, especially this was really an amazing discovery of Kalamata for me personally, and I hope for every one of us. So as you can see, I have slightly modified my title. I made it a bit spiced up and kind of more maybe catchy, hopefully not kitschy. And I'll explain why I put this title. In my paper, I'm going to argue that the evolution of the synodal ethos and institutions, instruments of the church had two main driving forces: ecclesial/theological crisis and logistics. In contrast to our days, when councils have become routinized and gather, is it all right? Am I heard well?
That's only the...
No, it's all right. I will start it in due time. In contrast to our days when councils have become routinized and gather when, in most cases, there is no urgent need for them, like, for example, the Council of Crete, which in contrast to the old councils, did not have a pressing agenda, I would say. The early Christian councils happened only when such urgent needs happened. I would call such councils ad hoc. The earliest ad hoc council that we are aware of was convened in Jerusalem sometime in the middle of the first Christian century. We know that it was urged by the most church-dividing issue of the time, whether to try to contain or to let the Jesus movement to spill out to the non-Jewish milieu. Later on, the chain of events caused by the persecutions, including the rising wave of lapsy, and the need to reaccommodate them in the church, as well as discipline-related schisms, which were related to the lapsy, of course, urged local churches to hold another series of ad hoc councils, mostly in the second and third Christian centuries. All these councils were local. They were initiated and executed by the church without any help from outside. The situation changed in the early 4th century 1 year after promulgating the Edict of Milan in 314, Constantine, at the time the ruler of only the western part of the Roman Empire, convened a council in Arles, what is now France. His goal was to help the church to deal with the Donatist schism. This gathering became a game changer, I believe. It is the first imperial synod sponsored or co-sponsored by the state. It was still ad hoc because it addressed a very particular issue in the Latin-speaking North Africa. But its weight was now different from the early ad hoc councils. Most of the later councils, including the ones which we now in the East call ecumenical, would become imperial as well, meaning that they were sometimes initiated, always paid for, and often presided by the state. Soon, the church faced a crisis that would last in the East for almost the entire century, and in the West, a couple of centuries longer. It is conveniently called Arian, but this is more a propagandist trope than the historical reality. It started in Alexandria and indeed was initially connected with the name of the local presbyter Arius. Soon it would become much bigger than Alexandria or Arius and engulfed the entire imperial church. It spread across the empire and spilled beyond its boundaries. The main instrument to tackle this series of crises became the Institute of Councils. Both the church and the state perceived this institute as the most appropriate one to deal with the issue of Arianism. As a result, the church literally exploded with councils. They were convened in every corner of the empire and outside it, on all levels of imperial administration: municipal, provincial, diocesan, prefectural, and finally pan-imperial. Antagonizing church parties called councils against each other, causing what I would call synodomachia. Well, it is in the title of my presentation, synodomachia. Indeed, the entire 4th century could be called the century of synodomachia. However, the spread of the councils in the East and the West was not even. There were more councils in the East, as this can be seen in the following charts that I'm going to demonstrate now. The councils that took place in what is now believed to be Christian East, even though at that time it was a bit different, are marked in this chart as dark blue. The councils in the modern Christian West are in dark red. So the first one is, you can see only really one council happened in Rome. It was in the period under Constantine, the period of Constantine. Then the councils became more spread to the West. And you can see the next stage, the councils that happened under Constantius II, under the successor of Constantine. You can see that there are more councils happening in the, what we now perceive as the West, but still there were not as many in the West as they were in the East. So the East was really the main playground for the councils in the 4th century. And then we can see the councils that happened after Constantius. So all those councils are related to the, what we now call Arian controversy, but I think it is more correct to call it Nicene or post-Nicene controversy. Still, you see there are more councils happening in the East than in the West. Hence is my first hypothesis. The roots of the idea that the Christian East is more conciliar, of course, this idea can be completely wrong. It's a myth, and we understand now that it's greatly mythical, because like the West had, during the last 2 centuries, had more ecumenical councils than the East tried to have. And our epic failure with the Great Council in Crete demonstrates that probably this idea is kind of mythical, but still, it is a kind of an actual myth that still circulates and captivates the imagination of many. And whatever it is, the roots of this idea that the Christian East is more conciliar than the Christian West go back to the 4th century, the century of synodomachia, because at that time the Arian crisis was more tense in the East. More councils tackling this crisis happened there. This experience of crisis management, usually not a very pleasant one, was eventually transformed to stronger institutes and identities of synodality, which really happened in the East. Of course, this was not the only factor that contributed to the enhanced synodality in the East, but certainly it was one of the most important ones. My second hypothesis is that along with fierce theological controversies, logistics played a pivotal role in the formation of synodal institutions. In the period when the Church started convening its councils, traveling was a luxury. On the one hand, Roman roads were more affordable and accessible for folks who did not have imperial business than, for example, the roads in the Persian Empire, which had been the first one that introduced a network of trans-imperial highways. I just finished reading a book about the Persian Empire, the Achaemenid period, and it was really very clearly stated there that the first pan-imperial network was established by the Achaemenids, and then the kind of Romans inherited it somehow. But the Romans also upgraded this network significantly and made it really accessible to anyone. In theory, because on the other hand, still only a few could afford using the road system of the Roman Empire. Christian bishops were not yet rich enough at the time to be able to travel at their convenience. And this is a picture that shows, I took this picture in the ancient Byblos in what is now Lebanon. This is originally a Persian road, then was turned into the Macedonian road, and then eventually it became a Roman road. So it's all the same road, but it went through different phases, and you can see also one can observe really the evolution of what is the idea of the road and its play in its role in the life of the people and societies. The availability of roads seemed to concern the Church not much less than the issues it tried to solve. I would be that materialistic in this my hypothesis. In my opinion, that was one of the reasons why the Church picked up a word to describe the gatherings of its leaders that had the word "iodos" road at its root. So synodos, synodos, this Greek word, has its root odos, road. So the very idea of synodos has to do with roads. Therefore, synodos, synodos, literally means a gathering of those who together hit the same road. In ancient Greek, such people were called with the same word synodos, but in masculine genus with the article o synodos. So there were two Greek words, synodos and o synodos. So synodos was the gathering, o synodos was the one who attended a gathering. Synodos. Well, not quite so, because I checked it in the dictionary, in the Brill dictionary, and it stated it's also o synodos. Not just in the modern it is synodos, but in the ancient Greek it was o synodos. You may check it out as well. Well, no. Okay, we can discuss it. Of course, the Church did not coin this word, but reused it from the ancient Greek vocabulary. Hence is my third hypothesis. Christian synodality absorbed some semantic elements attached to the word synodos in its classical usage. Such reutilization and repurposing of the ancient notion are similar to what happened to the word ecclesia. The latter was also borrowed by the Christian Church from the political language of ancient Greece. Of course, there was this translation of Septuagint, where Kahal Yahweh was translated as Ecclesia to Theou. But for the ancient Christians, I'm quite sure they had in front of them the ancient Ecclesia, just the one that we saw today, when they decided to call their gatherings as ecclesia. So in ancient Greece, as we all know, ecclesia meant regular gatherings of some urban strata and expressed the quintessence of the democratic system of political decision-making. The Church borrowed this notion in order, among other things, to emphasize its preferable way of decision-making through conciliar gatherings. From this perspective, it could be called itself synodos instead of ecclesia. So I would argue that both terms, synodos and ecclesia, in their very ancient meanings, are applicable to what we now call ecclesia. The original ecclesia was not just an event, but also a place, as we just saw today. Sometimes ecclesia were designated and designed specifically for such meetings, like Athens' pnyx. Sometimes theaters and other spacious venues were used for ecclesial gatherings. Like this one, which I saw in Italy, in Paestum, what is used to be Posidonia. This is a beautiful ecclesia, almost a Baroque style in Italy, as it should be. And another one is this one. Probably you even recognize some people on this page, on this picture. So this is another ecclesia. The idea of synodos, like the idea of ecclesia, comprises both the event and space. It originally meant and continues meaning a gathering. Aristophanes, in his Thesmophoriazuse, referred to the meetings of the Athenians by two synonymous words, ecclesia and synodos. So for Aristophanes, they were two synonyms, ecclesia and synodos. I quote Aristophanes, pray that all may happen for the best at this gathering, both for the greatest advantage of Athens. Well, once we're in Greece, let me quote it in Greek. Εύχεστε εκκλησίαν τίνδε και σύνοδον την νυν κάλιστα και άριστα ποιήσε, πολυοφελώς μεν τη πόλη τη Αθηναίων. So he puts together εκκλησίαν τίνδε και σύνοδον. Even more explicit about this is Aristotle, who puts the word synodos in line with vuli and ecclesia. So Aristotle also uses in the same line, ecclesia, vuli, and synodos. Excuse me. The root of the word synodos, iodos, implies a place. A road itself is a place. And such a place, let me show you. Oh, no, it's not this one. Okay. A road itself is a place. It also leads to a place which is important for those who take the road. In ancient Greece, some of such roads led to ecclesia, like the road leading to Pnyx in Athens. And I believe our next. This one. It's a road to Pnyx in Athens. So they were connected physically. I mean, ecclesia in Pnyx, for example, it had a road leading to it, and those that road had some kind of relation, I believe, even though it is speculative to ecclesia. Even more intrinsically, the notions of ecclesia and synodos became connected in the Christian era. Hans Küng insightfully explored this interconnectedness in his treatise, The Structures of the Church. We have come here for the same. We have come here to this place, to this colloque, for the same purpose, to explore this interconnectedness. It is worth exploring some nuances in the ancient usage of the word synodos, and it is amazing how they have become reflected in the Christian notions of synodality. I will dwell on these nuances in the remaining part of my presentation. Let me start with the earliest recorded instance of the word synodos in the Greek language. It goes back to the period when the democratic institutions in Athens, including ecclesia, were in the process of initial formation. Solon, in the 6th century BC, according to a surviving fragment, referred with some disappointment to synods that serve injustice. I quote Solon, «Eghar desmeneon tachaios polyiraton asti trichete en synodis, tis adikeusi philus. Tavtamen en dimosi strefete kaka». So he refers to a synod, Solon, with a negative kind of attitude in mind. Aesop, in the same period of time, also referred to synods rather sarcastically. For example, in his fable 83, The Fox and the Monkey, he spoke about a synod of illogical animals, literally a synod of illogical animals. I'd like to quote this fable completely. It's really funny, and it's here. A monkey once danced in an assembly of the beasts. Assembly here is synodos. And so pleased them all by his performance that they elected him their king. Well, almost a bishop. A fox, envying him the honor, discovered a piece of meat lying in a trap, and leading the monkey to the place where it was, said that she had found a store, but had not used it, but had kept it for him as treasure trove of the his kingdom, and counseled him to lay hold of it. The monkey approached carelessly and was caught in the trap. And on his accusing the fox of purposely leading him into the snare, she replied, "O monkey, and are you, with such a mind as yours, going to be king over the beasts?" So that is the parable of Aesop. For the assembly of beasts, Aesop used the word synodos and synodoton alogon zoon. So essentially, it has the same negative connotation as for Solon, this word synodos per se. So synodos first was a bad word in the Greek kind of archaic tradition. It is also noteworthy that for elected him their king, the original has Vasilevs ipavton ehirotonithi. So literally, the monkey was hirotonized, consecrated to become a king in the synod. So it's a very church language, which was used by Aesop. Well, it's a coincidence, of course, but it's a very funny coincidence, I find it. So essentially, this fable explains, maybe, speaking sarcastically, what is going in some church councils. Only later, only later, the word synodos was endorsed with more positive connotations. For example, Herodotus used this word in constructing the concept of Greek civilization as opposite to the Persian barbarianism. In the book 9 of his history, he counterposed the ordered way in which the Greek army was grouped, a linon synodon, to a rather chaotic crowd of the barbarians, barbarophonon iegin. So synodos as the opposite to iegi, to the crowd. Another Greek historian of the Persian campaigns, Xenophon, well, we were explained today about the Persian campaign, so it's very appropriate to mention them again. So Xenophon concurred with Herodotus's word usage by applying the term synods to the Greek units fighting the Persians. A famous Persian general, Tissaphernes, according to Xenophon, encountered such a synod at the Euphrates River and had to retreat. So Xenophon writes, "Ogar Tissaphernis antiproti synodo uk efige." In other words, the Greek historians underpin the word synodos with the subtext of order as opposite to house. They used it in the polemical context. Christian synods were gathered in a similar context with the same purpose, to bring order to the church matters and to fight for that order and truth, almost like the Greeks fought against the Persians. Plato liked the word synodos and used it together with derivatives of over 10 times. He was really a heavy user of the term synodos and the derivatives. For him, it meant primarily random encounters between people, usually friends, but could also apply to larger meetings. Some of such meetings could be religious and indeed for offering sacrifices. And let me jump to Plato. He describes in his laws, "We shall employ these subdivisions and give to each portion the name of a god or of a child of gods, and bestow on it altars and all that belongs thereto. And at these we shall appoint 2 assemblies, synodus," he uses the word synodus, "every month for sacrifice, of which 12 yearly shall be for the whole tribal division, and 12 for its urban section only. The object of this shall be, first, to offer thanksgiving to the gods and their attendants, and secondly, to promote fellowship amongst ourselves and the mutual acquaintance we spoke of, and association of every sort. I believe this is an important statement, which identifies two main tasks that participants in ancient synods were supposed to fulfill: offering something to gods and socializing with one another. These tasks correspond to two basic aspects of synodality in Christianity: theological and social. Well, synods are not just about theology, they are also about meeting other people, about socialization. These church representatives come together to councils to praise God, give solutions to the pressing issues, and to enjoy each one's company. And this idea goes back to Plato. The term synodos was even more popular with Aristotle, who used it almost twice more than Plato. His usage was similar to that of Plato. Thus, Aristotle emphasized both the religious and social aspects of synods. The latter, for Aristotle, featured a degree of entertainment. He describes in his Ethica Nicomacheia. Some associations, you can read it on the screen as well. Some associations appear to be formed for the sake of pleasure. For example, religious guilds and dining clubs, which are unions for sacrifice and social intercourse. But all these associations seem to be subordinate to the association of the state, which aims not at a temporary advantage, but at one covering the whole of life. Those who gather in such meetings, peritavtas synodos, here he uses the word synodos, combine to perform sacrifices and hold festivals in connection with them, thereby both paying honor to the gods and providing pleasant holidays for themselves. As if having Aristotle's advice in mind, those who organized what we now know as the First Ecumenical Council by the beautiful Lake of Nicaea, now Iznik Gelu. Even in our days, it is a recreational zone where one can enjoy swimming in shallow and clean water surrounded by fresh green. It's almost as pleasant as it is here in Kalamata, the water of the Lake of Nicaea. And I'm sure that bishops who gathered there in 325 enjoyed the environment and themselves, as everyone participating in the synodal events should do, as we do now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Father Cyril, for your presentation, giving us an idea of the term, the concept of synodos in a long explanation through the centuries and cultural backgrounds. May I invite you to ask questions or make remarks as you like. Yeah.
I have a question. I don't know if I'm able to formulate it properly, but I hope you'll understand what I mean. I would like to know when, maybe you know, the concept of ecumenical council appeared. I mean, when the church became conscious that there are different kind of councils that are more important than the others, because when we see the history of the councils after Nicaea, it was not the point of reference for other councils. There were councils in Antioch, more important and more important creeds. So when that idea started to be more concrete, visible.
Thank you for this question. Well, my guesswork is that maybe, and you may correct me, but my guesswork is that the moment they tried to replicate Nicaea was that moment of, rising self-awareness of the need for such an ecumenical council, especially the Council of Nicaea that you mentioned. I think that was probably the first one of the earliest attempts, because it was an attempt to replicate Nicaea, essentially, to repeat Nicaea in a better way. Then all the following attempts, including the Council in Rimini, in Nicaea, and others, when they tried to actually every emperor in every decade that followed Nicaea tried to have something like Nicaea, that was clearly an indication that Nicaea grew big in their consciousness. Probably it was not as big in the consciousness of the participants in Nicaea. They did not perceive Nicaea as big as it would become perceived, later on. But certainly in these later attempts of replication of Nicaea, most of them were Arian. We would call them Arian, even though it's incorrect. This idea of an ecumenical council, or like a council which is important for the entire empire, would emerge. That would be my guess.
Yeah, Father Andrew.
There is actually a quite well-known article by Henry Chadwick on the origins of the meaning of ecumenikos applied to a synod. And if I can remember it rightly, but I probably missed most of it, forgotten most of it. Nicaea is first called an ecumenical synod sometime in the middle of the 4th century. And by about the 5th century, many ecumenical councils begin to call themselves ecumenical councils as they meet. Certainly it's true of the second ecumenical council of Nicaea, which calls itself an ecumenical council in order to contradict the claim of the council of the Iconoclast Council of
Ieria.
That's right. Yeah. Henry Chadwick reflects on what the meaning really was, and he makes the suggestion, but I can't remember this is his final suggestion or early suggestion, that calling a council ecumenikos meant that the bishops were able to claim their travel expenses from the state.
Yeah. That's exactly my point, that it changed the game, this accessibility of roads.
May I just add to the question of the ecumenical councils? Of course, as I mentioned in my introduction, the official name was the Great and Holy Council. This you find in the texts. And therefore, that was also the reason that the synod, the council in Crete, took up the same wording. It was, unfortunately, I don't have the texts now here, the exact text, but it was in the middle of the 4th century that it first came up to speak of an ecumenical council. But it took some time till it got this specific, definite notion as we use it today. Other remarks or questions?
I just want to say that, to add to this, that exactly those, starting with the Council of Antioch and the councils that followed, like in Rimini and Nicaea, as I said, that is exactly the middle of the 4th century when they started conceiving the idea of the ecumenical council by trying to override Nicaea, quite paradoxically.
So this might just hint to the fact that things even developed and were not at the very beginning already clear, as we would think today. Okay, other remarks or questions? Michel?
Je vais m'exprimer en français. Merci pour cette excellente présentation. Une remarque et une question. Une remarque, c'est que, à mon avis, il faut bien distinguer entre deux types de conciles. Les conciles proprement institutionnels, à partir du concile de Nicée qui fixe qu'il faut se réunir régulièrement, au moins 2 fois par an en principe. Donc à partir de là, il y a des conciles qu'on peut qualifier d'institutionnels. En français d'ailleurs, on distingue le mot synode et concile. Quand c'est institutionnel, on dit plutôt synode. Et puis à côté, il y a des conciles extraordinaires et qui, à mon avis, ne sont pas des institutions, sont plutôt des événements. Des conciles que j'appellerais de généraux. Pourquoi j'appelle pas écuméniques? Parce qu'au moment où on les réunit, on ne sait pas s'ils seront écuméniques. Il y a des conciles généraux qui ont échoué. Ça, c'est pour la remarque. Maintenant, la question, parce que vous avez commencé le propos en disant le concile fondamental, le concile premier, c'est le concile de Jérusalem. Ma question est la suivante. Est-ce que c'est vraiment un concile? Est-ce que c'est pas un mythe, en fait?
Well, my brief answer is I don't know whether it is really, it looks like an extrapolation of the idea of later councils upon Jerusalem, right? It's like the extrapolation of posterior ideas about conciliarity upon the first century. Well, I don't know. Probably it's not really appropriate to call that gathering as a council. Certainly, the word synodos is not applicable to that one, because the word synodos was not yet used to describe those gatherings. So it's a much later term. Actually, yes, I think only when when this term started to be used, we could speak about the councils properly, synods at least. Well, that would be my answer. I would doubt probably that it's really a synodos, just only because it was not called and did not call itself a synodos, among other things.
If I may remark also, may I give a remark also? In my view, the big scholar in research on councils is Hermann Josef Sieben, who has written many books. And I talked with him, and he said, it is amazing that the Council of the Apostles, of the Acts of the Apostles, was never referred to as a model in later history of councils. They were not referring to it. And he was thinking, what can we do about this fact? Okay.
Si, il y a tout de même une référence qui est faite au concile de Jérusalem, c'est la formule to agio pneuma, qui est evoxe imin qui est to agio pneumati. La formule est importante, symbolique.
Implicitement.
Oui.
Thank you. Other remarks or questions? If not, I'm happy that at least at the very last moment, we have also a paper on synodality, as Father Demetrius yesterday claimed that such a paper is missing.
He had to stay a bit later.
Yeah, so far, I thank you very much, Father Cyril, for your paper, and then I give the word to Franz Mali. Yeah.
So for this final discussion, which is on our schedule, I would like to inform you that we have planned, as it is also foreseen for the other meetings, to publish all the contributions, a few photos, if Theresia and Tomasz will send us their photos. And we propose that you send, if it is possible, your contributions till the end of the year. And we hope that you receive in response to your contribution the old volume of the last meeting, because we did not finish yet the redaction. Most of the contributions are ready and prepared, but we are in contact with the edition, and one or two contributions are still missing, and the index and so on. But it's in the final elaboration. And so this is one information that I want to send it to Teresia, to me, maybe also to Alexei, and we will make the redaction of the contributions. First of all, this. Secondly, I want to thank especially Teresia for all the organization, for the preparing of this meeting, and especially here, but he is not here, Father Alexios.
Father Alexios.
For all the very sympathetic and friendly reception here in this house, for all the preparation, for all the small and big things you had to prepare and to organize every day for us. So a very, very big thanks to you and to His Excellency the Metropolitan for having accepted us here in Kalamata. It's certainly and what I want to say is, or ask you, if you have some general reflections or feedbacks to our meeting now, or to the place. I think you can add maybe some words also to Father Alexios and to the Metropolitan, His Excellency, and His Eminence. Okay, His Eminence, or whatever you want to express for the next organization and for the next meeting. We have decided yesterday that we are invited to Olomouc next time in 2 years, and if you have some other remarks, they are welcome. Ja, habe ich geschickt. Aha. Ja, habe ich schon gesagt. She remembers me that I should say that till the end of this year, you are invited to send the final version of your paper. So. Okay. Any remarks, any greetings, any, I don't know. I think that the topic of synodality is rather important, especially in the Catholic Church. And as we have seen, it's a remark of my part that synodality is more practiced in the East, or in the Eastern churches, than in the Western Church, I have the impression. And thanks to Pope Francis, I have the impression that this, how to say, this renewal of synodality has increased within the Catholic Church. And I hope that it will go on in this way and develop further. Yeah, Teresa.
Concerning thanks, I would, of course, very much thank Father Alexios, but also Father Philippos. I will write him also, because he did all the preparation, and that was in a very nice way and very efficient. So I will also thank him very much. And Father Alexios made perfectly, took over, and with his presence made us our stay simply marvelous, and did everything what we need immediately and with great care.
We have prepared a small present for Father Alexios and Father Philippos also. And I invite all the participants here in the room to sign the small greeting, which was formulated by Theresia in behavior of this book, before we can deliver it to Father Alexios with all the names and the signatures of everybody of us. If you agree with that, I invite you to come here and to sign
Okay.
the paper. And then we will give it to Father Alexios and Philippos.
Okay.
Okay, is there some other question or in the sense of organization or whatsoever?
Yeah. I may remind us that this evening we have a dinner with the mayor of Kalamata. I'm very grateful that he will show us and his respect and his generosity. So, but please come at 8:15. 8:15. No? Oh, excuse me. This I under. Please go.
One question.
Yes.
For the dinner will be at 8 o'clock,
At
but
8 o'clock.
but we will meet at the reception at which time?
7:45.
Okay.
Okay.
We will meet at 7:45 at the reception this evening.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
evening.
Okay.
Tomorrow morning, we have to be at the reception
Yes.
tomorrow morning, we have to be at the reception at 8:15. And for the evening, we have in the Church of St. John Baptist, the Catholic Mass.
Yeah.
Okay, at evening.
But in the morning is the Orthodox liturgy, Byzantine liturgy in the cathedral
Yes.
of
The
Kalamata.
cathedral. Yes, and we have after that a breakfast, and then we can visit several churches, and there's a nice program prepared already also by Father Philippos and Father Alexios in charge of His Eminences, the Metropolitan.
Okay. Any other question? If there are not, I and Alexei, we will leave already tomorrow rather early in the morning. And so I wish you all the best for the final day tomorrow, for the liturgy, for a very beautiful celebration, and for the visit in the town of Kalamata. I have to go back because on Monday morning, usual work is beginning at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Then I would like to thank Franz Mali very much for all his efforts and work, especially also in the publication, and all support and everything you do for this patristic colloquies. Already from the very beginning, we are here. As I said, we are now only 5 or 6 persons left, but Franz Mali was always there, and thank you very much for all you did.
Il faut remercier aussi Alexei parce que c'est lui qui organise pratiquement.
This I wanted to add. I thank very much Alexei for his great work in the publication, organizing the staff and doing the correction and all these things very well. Gregor Emenecker could not come this time. He is also for the whole style and the other work is responsible for that. But especially at this occasion, since Alexei is here, I want to express my cordial thanks.
So I invite everybody to accept Alexios evidently to sign the paper here, and then we can deliver the book to Father Alexios.
There's probably also coffee breaks prepared. So.
See you later.